Welcome, everybody. And let some people trickle in. So excited to have you all here. Welcome, welcome. All right. Welcome, everybody, to this evening's virtual event with James Cruz in conversation with Danusha Laméris. My name is Holly, and I'm the events assistant here at Bookshop Santa Cruz, where I am broadcasting live. And tonight we are so thrilled to celebrate the release of The Path to Kindness. James and Danusha will have a conversation about the book, and then they'll answer some of your questions. But before we get started, a quick overview of the event platform we are using here. I'm sure many of you have done this many times before. So we are in a Zoom webinar, which means we can't hear or see you at home, but we are all here together, and I welcome you to drop a line in the chat, as I see many of you already are. And if you do drop a line in the chat, make sure to check and see that you are sending it to everyone instead of just the hosts and the panelists, if you want to create a big conversation with everyone tuning in today. You can also just sit back and let the chat go by. And of course, thank you for being respectful in advance. Closed captioning is automatically on. You can hide that if you'd like. Just click that at the bottom of your screen. This event is also being recorded, so you can rewatch it if you miss anything. We will send out the link tomorrow evening, or you can also find the replay on our YouTube page later this evening, and we'll drop a link in the chat for our YouTube page as well. We will have an audience Q&A at the end of the event. You can enter your questions in the little Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to enter those throughout the whole event. They will stay there, so we'll get to them at the end. As soon as a question hits you, you can put that in there. Of course, we encourage you to purchase the book. I know a lot of you already have. They're totally flying off the shelves, but your purchase supports local jobs and independent culture, and it shows the publisher that our audience is invested and engaged. So thank you for your purchase. We do have some upcoming events, which are both in-person and virtual now. We've got a virtual event this Thursday with Felicia Cocotzin Ruiz, and then next Thursday with Leopoldo Gout and Eva Arigis. So check back on our website to view our upcoming schedule and calendar. And on to the main attraction. James Cruz is the editor of the best-selling anthology, How to Love the World, which has been featured on NPR's Morning Edition, as well as in the Boston Globe and the Washington Post. He's the author of 4 prize-winning collections of poetry, The Book of What Stays, Telling My Father, Bluebird, and Every Waking Moment. And his poems have been reprinted in the New York Times Magazine, Plowshares, The New Republic, and the Christian Century. Cruz teaches poetry at the University of Albany and lives with his husband in Shaftesbury, Vermont. And Danusha Laméris is the author of 2 books, The Moons of August, which was chosen by Naomi Shihab Nye as the winner of the Autumn House Press Poetry Prize, as well as Bonfire Opera, which won the Northern California Book Award. Winner of the Lucille Clifton Legacy Award, she teaches in the Pacific University Low Residency MFA program and co-hosts with James Cruz the Poetry of Resilience online seminars. She lives in Santa Cruz County, California, where she was the Poet Laureate from 2018 through 2020. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming them both to the screen. Hi.
Hi.
I'll let you both take it from here.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for that, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. James, hello.
Thanks so much for doing this with me and welcoming the path to kindness into the world. And welcome to everyone who's here. I see lots of familiar names. I was going to say faces, but we're not seeing faces. We're just seeing names.
No, we're imagining your faces.
That's right.
That's what we're doing. And I just want to wish you a happy publication day and birthday for this beautiful anthology that I'm always holding up James's anthologies. Don't mind my little notes. They're so sweet always to look at and to hold as well as to read. So thank you for gifting us with this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I wanted to start just by saying too that, Danusha's poem, Small Kindnesses, I know has been a touchstone for so many of us over the years. And I'm so glad that this is kind of anchoring starting things off. I mean, Danusha has her lovely foreword that starts off the path to kindness, and also her poem, Small Kindnesses. And you know, Danusha, I've been doing just a few interviews, and I did one other reading for this book, and someone mentioned what you had said in the foreword, which is that we think of kindness as being like sugar, but it's actually more like salt. And like too much will ruin the cake, right? You just need like that little bit.
Flavors the dish, right? That little bit. And you know, that's interesting because I know we're going to delve into the poems themselves in a moment, but I really appreciated in your introduction that you talk about some of the darkness, some of the shadow that is behind our need for kindness in the everyday, talking about your husband going through a really difficult time when he was asked to leave the military under the don't say gay stuff, right? And it was going on and is still going on in many places. And but just touching into that because of how the smallest gestures meant so much to him during a time when he felt ambivalent about just being.
Yeah.
And you know, that's that quality of salt too. It's like the harshness that we can encounter in our lives gives birth to that tremendous need for kindness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that applies too, because, you know, I'm just thinking of people who are struggling, and, you know, oftentimes, you know, if we come to them and just overwhelm them with like, oh, how can I help? What can I do? You know, it's like actually what people need is more of that, the pinch of salt, right? The listening presence, the smile or the wave or the small bit of encouragement, you know, because that's more genuine.
Wow. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Sure, too.
Yeah, sorry, you froze for just an instant, but I heard what you were saying, that that's often more genuine, just that little pinch. That actually made me think of one of the poems already to read. Shall we just kind of delve in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we're doing what we do. James and I love doing things together. And that is what we're doing. And I love hearing James read as well, but I'll just start in because that did make me think of the poem. If you have the book, I like to say what page we're on. It's page 151 for all of you out there. And it's the poem When You Meet Someone Deep in Grief by Patricia McKernan Runkle. When you meet someone deep in grief, slip off your needs and set them by the door. Enter barefoot this darkened chapel, hollowed by loss, hollowed by sorrow. Its gray stone walls and floor, you, congregation of one, and here to listen, not sing. Kneel in the back pew. Make no sound. Let the candles speak.
Beautiful reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to include that poem because it, you know, I know so many people are dealing with grief right now, and it's been such a hard few years that I think, you know, that is kindness too. Just that sitting there without trying to fix anything.
Yeah. Sometimes doing less. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a poem that comes to mind for you that you would like to turn to next?
Absolutely. You know, Danusha and I often talk about how we are drawn to the more like emotionally weighty poems, and that those are the ones that draw us in. And so this one I've just been thinking about lately. It's called Terry Kirby. It's by Terry Kirby Erickson, and it's called Free Breakfast. The Spring Hill Suites free breakfast area was filling up fast when a man carrying his disabled young son lowered him into his chair, the same way an expert pilot's airplane kisses the runway when it lands. And all the while, the man whispered into his boy's ear, perhaps telling him about the waffle maker that was such a hit with the children gathered around it, or sharing the family plans for the day as they traveled to wherever they were going. Whatever was said, the boy's face was alight with some anticipated happiness, and the father, soon joined by the mother, seemed intent on providing it. So beautiful they all were, it was hard to concentrate on our eggs and buttered toast, to look away when his parents placed their hands on the little boy's shoulders and smiled at one another as if they were the luckiest people in the room.
That's so lovely, James.
Mm.
As if they were the luckiest people in the room, which no doubt we are when we are in that state of love. We are the luckiest people.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think of when my husband was a classroom aide in classrooms with special needs kids, and I had a special needs child then as well. And the boy he was working with called him at home and said, to tell him, I am so happy. And my husband said, well, why are you so happy? And he said, because I love you.
Oh.
Because
Wow.
I love you. I know we're James and I try not to cry at the beginning of the reading, but I'm kind of feeling that. I'm happy because I love you.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times we've remembered that moment as one of those sacred moments of life when someone is just speaking the raw truth.
Yeah. What a relief when that happens, when someone does tell the truth like that, and that it's based in love. And I think, this poem really appeals to me too, because we often, look at folks who are maybe caring for children with special needs and think like, oh, they're so heroic and, it must be such a burden. And perhaps those things are true, but the love is also true. And the feeling like the luckiest person is also true.
That's also true. We all want to get close to the fire is how I think of it, that fire of true life, and sometimes it burns a little, but we want to be close to that fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fire of true life. I really like that.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that I want to read from here, and I'm so grateful for. I love the way a book can be a companion, and this is the kind of companion that I think many of us need right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, and that really is my intention with these books, that I wanted to be a companion, or even like a safe space where people can show up and pick up the book whenever they need a reminder of why we're here, what's possible in the world. When you get tired of the news telling you what's wrong with the world, just having some reminders of what's right. And that just like, I just keep thinking like, I'm happy because I love you. It's like
I know.
as simple as that, right?
What else is there? Someone wrote in the comments that must have made my husband's whole week. Definitely. And more than that, even, because every time we remember it, right? That
comes back, right?
Comes back. Yeah. Wow, there's so much to read. I think I'm going to, and I would love to hear you read one of your poems soon too, James.
Sure.
I'm going to read Ross Gay's poem, Thank You, that is on page 57 of The Path to Kindness. And here it is. Thank you. If you find yourself naked and barefoot in the frosty grass, hearing again the earth's great sonorous moan that says, you are the air of the now and gone, that says all you love will turn to dust and will meet you there. Do not raise your fist. Do not raise your small voice against it. And do not take cover. Instead, curl your toes into the grass. Watch the cloud ascending from your lips. Walk through the garden's dormant splendor. Say only, thank you, thank you.
Such a lovely one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think of this poem as being, like Ross Gay himself, very bold and telling the truth, and like, yes, death will come, all you love will turn to dust, but even in the midst of these thoughts, we can curl our toes in the grass, and even if it's winter, we can curl our toes in the frosty grass and just come back to the world, right?
Yeah, even if it's winter. Even though, there's always an even though, right? Even though I keep finding myself having those thoughts, oh, I'll really settle in when? I'll really enjoy my life when? I'll really, it's like, really? So I like having these reminders, and we need them because we forget things so easily. And I know I keep saying this in our webinar, but maybe people here won't have heard it, but we love this thing that Jane Hirschfield said, that poems contain the mineral knowledges that we need and preserve those knowledges for us so that we can come back to the poem and have the same realization, get that same mineral content again and again and again, even daily, if we need it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and I was just thinking, so Danusha and I lead webinars called the Poetry of Resilience, for anyone who doesn't know, and we are lucky enough to be taught by these people who visit us, and Ross Gay was one of those people. So I was thinking of both Jane's comment, but also Ross talking about, the difference between joy and happiness, that happiness, can sometimes, we think of it in the like conditional way, that it can be very fleeting, but joy is this deeper thing, and it's absolutely connected to gratitude and pausing in the moment and saying thank you for what's right in front of us.
That's right. And didn't he say joy is grave?
I think he said gratitude is grave, but he may have said joy is grave too.
Okay, we're going to have to check our notes. He said one of those things.
but I think his point was just that it is, it's sort of what you were saying with the pinch of salt comment with kindness, that we think of it as this saccharine kind of sugary thing, and yet it's actually very serious. It's very grave, I think, is because it holds, gratitude. And this poem, which is titled Thank You, holds the splendor that's to come, as well as its dormancy, the death of winter. And that's what gratitude can do. That's what, we're often talking when we're together about what poetry can do. And that is what a good poem does. These poems are about kindness, connection, and joy. and yet you just read one that was about grief, so poetry can hold all of those things. And I think most of these poems do tend to be more of the light side in terms of like light and shadow, but both of those are important.
That's true. Both of those are important, and each gives rise to the other, right? They're just so connected.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear you read your poem, Self-Compassion, since
Okay.
we're talking about kindness. Why not include kindness to ourselves?
Yeah, I'll just have to, that wasn't one that I marked, but that's quite
sorry.
all right. It's okay.
Page 66.
Look at this. Danusha knows my book better than I do at this point.
Oh, I doubt that, but I'm tracking you. Good. I know where your poem is. That one.
Yeah, so this is self-compassion, and I usually tell people I think it's maybe interesting to know that it was written during that first difficult year of the pandemic when so much seemed uncertain. And there are just these periods in our lives when it feels like lots of little things are going wrong at once, or even sometimes big things. And so this is about that convergence. And I think it is often when we turn to these practices of meditation and self-compassion that that things are just going wrong and we have no other choice. And that was certainly the case for me. And I apologize ahead of time. If I freeze it all, please let me know and I'll just start again. I think Danusha knows this, but maybe you all don't know it. I live in the middle of the woods, and so getting solid internet is sometimes a challenge. So this is self-compassion. My friend and I snickered the first time we heard the meditation teacher, a grown man, call himself honey, with a hand placed over his heart to illustrate how we too might become more gentle with ourselves and our runaway minds. It's been years since we sat with legs twisted on cushions, holding back our laughter. But today I found myself crouched on the floor again, not meditating exactly, just agreeing to be still, saying honey to myself each time I thought about my husband splayed on the couch with aching joints and fever from a tick bite. What if he never gets better? Or considered the threat of more wildfires, the possible collapse of the Gulf Stream, and remembered that in a few more minutes I'd have to climb down to the cellar and empty the bucket I placed beneath a leaky pipe that can't be fixed until next week. How long do any of us really have before the body begins to break down and empty its mysteries into the air? Oh, honey, I said, for once, without a trace of irony or blush of shame, the touch of my own hand on my chest, like that of a stranger, oddly comforting in spite of the facts.
Oh, without a trace of irony or blush of shame. The things that we ridicule, right, are usually where we end up.
Totally.
How many times has that happened to us? We think something is ridiculous, and then we're like, oh, I actually kind of need that. Or I'm like that.
Yeah. And it's usually when we surrender thoughts of being hip or like being edgy, which kind of flew out the window for me a long time ago. But
I've lost all hope of that for myself. All hope. And there's some grace in that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of grace. And I think then you're much more open to what actually works. And, I think I was going pretty hard and doing a lot before the pandemic hit. And I think like a lot of people, I realized like I would need to engage in some self-care and self-compassion, which is the highest kindness, if I was going to have a healthier, more grounded life.
Yeah. The struggle, though, for that
Mhm.
is a very real one. And so again, that's a mineral knowledge that we need. It's a mineral knowledge. So I saw Gina, I saw you going, I'm still taking in those mineral knowledges. Aren't we all? It's all I want to talk about now since
Yeah.
Jane said that to us. And it's very real because we move towards self-compassion or self-care, and then we move away from it. And then we move toward it, and then we go, oh, everybody else's needs are more important. So again, I really appreciate having poems that remind me of something
Mhm.
that I'm prone to forgetting. So thank you again for that, James.
Well, thank you for asking me to read it. And I think, it's important to point out too that I think it's why I am a poet and why I'm a writer is because I need those reminders. Like you said earlier, we forget so easily. And I think if I didn't capture it in the container of a poem, I might be more apt to just let it go or breeze past it.
Yeah. And not that we know when we're writing a poem that it's going to give us any particular piece of wisdom or information. I think that's the beauty of writing, is that we don't know what we're going to get.
Mhm.
And that's the surprise in the box. That's the Cracker Jacks surprise. Is there something in there that we need to know and didn't realize that we needed to know or remember?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love the
Yeah.
idea of the Cracker Jack surprise because you don't go into writing a poem or writing anything with a specific intention necessarily. You just sort of let it take over, or at least that's the most fun, I think.
That's the most fun.
Yeah.
That is definitely the most fun.
Would you read one of your poems?
One of mine. Okay. It's funny how we forget that too. I was going to read a different thing, but I will read it after. I'm going to read an itty bitty poem that I wrote when the New York Public Library was asking for poets for pocket poems that were just little 8-liners that could be given to people in scrolls and they could take them away and put them in their pockets. And anyway, so I thought I'd write it partly about pockets, but also the heart. The heart is not a pocket, a thing that can be turned inside out by anybody's hand. Not a place for pebbles or loose change, not to carry old receipts. It does not tear at the seam. It doesn't have a seam. It cannot be torn.
Love that. It's a little poem, but there's a big message in there. Yeah, that truth, that the heart cannot be torn. And I think it's a little different than what we may be used to hearing, that, that idea of the broken heart. And I like the idea of the heart being almost made of fabric, that it's flexible somehow, and that it can hold all these things.
It can and does somehow. Somehow.
Somehow it does it.
I'm happy because I love you, James.
I'm happy because I love you too.
I like to embarrass James just a little bit, but also it's true.
Yes, my face is already getting red, but thank you.
Let's hear your poem.
Yeah, so this next one is called The Most Important Thing. This is by Julia Fehrenbacher, who I think might be here tonight. I think I saw her name there in the chat, but a wonderful poet who lives in Oregon. And so this is again about some of that self-kindness and self-compassion. I am making a home inside myself, a shelter of kindness where everything is forgiven, everything allowed, a quiet patch of sunlight to stretch out without hurry, where all that has been banished and buried is welcomed, spoken, listened to, released. A fiercely friendly place I can claim as my very own. I am throwing arms open to the whole of myself, especially the fearful, fault-finding, falling apart, unfinished parts, knowing every seed and weed, every drop of rain has made the soil richer. I will light a candle, pour a cup of hot tea, gather around the warmth of my own blazing fire. I will howl if I want to, knowing this flame can burn through any perceived problem, any prescribed perfectionism, any lying limitation, every heavy thing. I am making a home inside myself where grace blooms in grand and glorious abundance, a shelter of kindness that grows all the truest things. I whisper hallelujah to the friendly sky. Watch now as I burst into blossom.
Oh, I felt that. I really felt that. I'm making a home inside myself.
Yeah.
That's a prompt, I feel like. I know we can't resist a prompt. If you were to make a home inside yourself, what would it be for?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Or what would it look like? What would it contain?
Look like? I'm writing this down. So thank you for this.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had caught that one or shared that with you before, Danusha, because we do have the reflective pauses in here with the prompts along the way. But I missed that one, so that's another one.
That's another
right?
one. It's never too late. I'm making a home inside. I know I feel ridiculous for taking notes. I know we can watch this later, but I forget everything and I want to remember it now. So thank you for that. And something about the tea and the sense of welcome makes me want to read our dear friend Naomi Shihab Nye's poem Red Brocade, which is toward the front of this book. And let us just say that poetically, Naomi is an ambassador of kindness with her poem Kindness that I grew up knowing and have memorized mostly, memorized it at some point. It comes and goes, but also just a beautiful poem and in the book. And here is her poem, Red Brocade. The Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, where he's headed. That way, he'll have strength enough to answer. Or by then, you'll be such good friends, you don't care. Let's go back to that. Rice, pine nuts. Here, take the red brocade pillow. My child will serve water to your horse. No, I was not busy when you came. I was not preparing to be busy. That's the armor everyone put on to pretend they had a purpose in the world. I refuse to be claimed. Your plate is waiting. We will snip fresh mint into your tea.
Doesn't that just capture Naomi's spirit perfectly? I love that poem so much, especially that stanza. Let's go back to that. Rice, pine nuts. Here, take the red brocade pillow. It's like you just feel like that. Even when you're talking to Naomi, she would just give you whatever she had.
That's right. And it struck me this time reading it that she has sworn off what word, James?
Busy.
Busy. She does not, unless she's changed policy since then, use the word busy. And I think that's a really interesting challenge. I am also trying not to use that word. What happens when we let go of a word? And is there a word that you would let go of to anyone out there? It's just an interesting thought.
Yeah.
What happens when we let go of a word like busy?
Yeah, I've been using the word full
Yeah.
instead of busy because it feels more accurate. And
Yeah. Oh, we had you freeze for just a moment. Dun, dun, dun. I hope we get James back. Oh, I hope we do. I think you're coming back. You froze for a moment for me anyway.
yeah, I felt that. Yeah.
Was there something you wanted to repeat after the part about letting go of busy?
Yeah, so I was really struck by her phrase in this poem, I refuse to be claimed.
Yeah.
Just like that idea that busyness is an armor and that she's not going to let herself be claimed by these ideas that other people are letting rule their lives. And I think that's a kindness to herself. It's also a kindness to other people, to just like what you see is what you get. Like I'm, just going to show up as I am.
I'm going to snip some mint leaves for your tea and be with you, right? That's really where this poem is. It's making us remember, what if we let go of busy and drop in?
Right. Right.
What happens
Yeah.
when we do that?
I just got that in a deeper way, like letting go of busy, letting go of the armor that we can sometimes put on that actually gets between us and connecting with someone else.
That's really true. It is an armor, isn't it?
Mhm.
Even if it's true that we're busy, it's also true that we have a moment,
Yes.
even if it's an eternal and short moment, to really look at each other.
Yeah. And even those looks, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us felt this throughout the pandemic when more and more people were masked. Even a kind look, the crinkle of the eyes when someone's smiling can make a difference. It's one of those small things that are not so small.
That's so true. A baby smiled at me the other day, and I carried it the entire day. The baby smiled, the baby waved, the baby just smiled again and again. And I just thought, I am saving this up. This is going in the bank account, whatever that bank account is.
I love that. I think we all know what that feels like, that it just the sense of lightness and yeah, what a beautiful moment.
Yeah. Someone here wrote, I stopped using the word busy 10 years ago. This is from Eileen. I noticed when I used it, my shoulders hunched and my back was less straight. And she's also using the word full. Yeah. What does it do to our bodies?
Yeah. So it's kind to ourselves to just change the language. And I think it does make space for more connection with ourselves and with other people. So so I want to read a poem by Ada Limon, who is also a guest in one of our webinars. We have all the best people.
We do.
And this one is called The Raincoat. And it's there's another poem in here about, well, I guess a couple of poems about parental sacrifice and parents kind of going the extra mile for kids. And that was just an accident. Sometimes you come upon the right poems at the right time and they just get grouped together. And so that was a really happy accident in putting this book together, that I kind of realized that idea of parental sacrifice was one of these things that touches on a lot of us, even if we didn't have the best parents in the world, which, who does? Probably your parents did make some kind of sacrifice at some point, or you yourself make sacrifice. So this is The Raincoat. When the doctor suggested surgery and a brace for all my youngest years, I'm sorry, this is on page 103 for anybody who's
Frozen moments. That's what we want in poems, but not as much on internet. But we'll see if James returns. There, you're just coming back in. Okay, good.
When the doctor suggested surgery and a brace for all my youngest years, my parents scrambled to osteopathy, and soon my crooked spine unspooled a bit. I could breathe again and move more in a body unclouded by pain. My mom would tell me to sing songs to her the whole 45-minute drive to Middle 2 Rock Road and 45 minutes back from physical therapy. She'd say even my voice sounded unfettered by my spine afterward. So I sang and sang because I thought she liked it. I never asked her what she gave up to drive me or how her day was before this chore. Today, at her age, I was driving myself home from yet another spine appointment, singing along to some maudlin but solid song on the radio. And I saw a mom take her raincoat off and give it to her young daughter when a storm took over the afternoon. My God, I thought, my whole life I've been under her raincoat, thinking it was somehow a marvel that I never got wet.
Oh my gosh. I just love that. I feel that too. Thinking it was somehow a marvel. I feel, hearing you read that, it has a partner poem, doesn't it, in the book, which is Coniferous Fathers by Michael Kleber Diggs. And we may not have time to read that today, just looking at where we are, but a partner poem, and one that usually makes us cry a little bit.
Yeah, that one almost did it to me. I almost lost it reading that one.
I like that we have work where we can just sort of lose it, and that's okay.
It's actually rewarded, or it's a sign that someone has done their work if we're
Exactly.
losing it when reading a poem.
Exactly. I love that about it. Well, thank you, James. And I thought I would finish at least my reading part by reading Kimberly Blazer's poem about standing in kinship. And I guess that, Kimberly's another poet that we had in the webinar. I'm not planning it that way. I just was feeling this poem in the moment, but Kimberly came and shared so much wisdom and humor and wonder with us about talking to wild animals and so many things. She's a Native American poet living in Wisconsin. Do I have that right? Milwaukee? Yes, I think I do. Part of the year from a place accessible only by canoe. And so she has this, she just has wonderful stories. Anyway, here's her poem about standing in kinship. We all have the same little bones in our foot, 26 with funny names like navicular. Together they build something strong. Our foot arch a pyramid holding us up. The bones don't get casts when they break. We tape them, one phalange to its neighbor for support. Other things like sorrow work that way too. Find healing in the leaning, the closeness. Our feet have 1/4 of all the bones in our body. Maybe we should give more honor to feet and to all those tiny but blessed cogs in the world, communities, the forgotten architecture of friendship.
So much power in that poem.
Yeah. I love her focus on smallness. It's something she spoke about when we were with her, that, again, I guess coming full circle, it's often just the smallest things these tiny, tiny things that we rely upon, like the bones in our feet. And I love a poem that works on a fact. 26 bones in the feet. They don't put them in casts when they break. We're just starting with the facts, but what is that like?
Right.
So I love where she goes with that.
It always makes me think too, it's the same number of bones in the feet that there are letters in the alphabet.
Oh, that's strange. I never thought about that.
Isn't that weird?
That is weird. Now I'm going to be up at night wondering about the connection.
But I love the smallness too, and also the idea that when we are in sorrow, we tape, we heal by taping ourselves to each other, basically by staying close, and leaning on each other. And I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful and true thing.
Beautiful and true. Yeah. Well, I guess this is the point when we turn towards questions, if there are questions. Hi, Holly.
Hi. Thank
Hello.
you. Oh my God, I'm taking notes as well. This is so beautiful. Yeah, we do have some questions if you all are ready. Starting with the Q&A tab, Judy wants to know, she says, I'd like to know a bit or maybe more about James's process as he puts together an anthology. I can't even imagine starting this process.
Yeah, it's a long process. I would say I've always been a gatherer of poems because I've been a teacher for over 15 years now, both in university settings and privately, and now with Danusha, luckily. And so I'm just always gathering poems and trying to find poems that really speak to me. And I think I'm only beginning to understand more of my process because this one is my third one. So you would think I would know by now, but I don't. I just figured it out. And I think what I like to do is just gather poems into a big document. And I'm often sharing poems on social media that are just getting me going or helping me live my life at a given moment. And so I kind of look at that document and the organizing force of these poems. And sometimes I think I know what it is, or I think I know what the next anthology is going to be like. I put together Healing the Divide, my very first anthology that was also about kindness. And then I thought the next one was going to be like mindfulness nature poems. That's what I thought that I was going to be doing. And then I just felt really led to the concepts of gratitude and hope. It just felt like that's what we were missing in our culture at that time, and still probably to a large degree. But what I'm often looking for is what's missing, or what am I not seeing enough in the news or in the culture at large, and just trying to feel like, what do I need first? Like that's kind of my best barometer, and then seeing what and then kind of extrapolating that and seeing how other people respond to the poems that I post online. And often people will tell me that, these are the poems that touch them the most. And I can still remember sharing Danusha's poems, Small Kindnesses, and many others by her, and just getting that feedback about that poem and the others being really transformative for other people. And so I listen to what people say, and I also listen to myself. And it's a long process because you have to gather poems, often reaching out to poets. But I tend to trust what comes across my desk. And that means that I then have to go and get permissions from the publishers or the poets themselves. And that's really the toughest.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like it's really special to have a poet share which poems they are touched by. I feel like so often that's, for me at least, so special. So thank you.
There eventually.
Oh.
Where did I freeze?
It felt like a closing point, but we don't know if it was. It's closing up the process. I can't remember your exact wording, but
Say it's there.
Well, perfect. Then let's transition to the next question. This is one for either of you. Raymond says, you've mentioned mineral knowledge a couple of times. Can you unpack or example what that is?
I can start by giving it a go and then feel free to weigh in if you like, James. It was a term that Jean Hirschfield, who's just one of our favorite poets, that she came up with on the spot. So it was just sort of something that dropped into the conversation, that she said, oh, poems contain these mineral knowledges that we need and that we forget. And so if I were to use an example from, say, a poem we just read, when I read Kimberly's poem, Standing Together, sorry, I'm not saying the whole, in Kinship, Standing Together in Kinship, James said, oh, that reminder that when we're broken, we need to lean on each other. So I think for that one, that would be an example of a mineral knowledge, some essential true thing. That's how I would define it, an essential true thing that we tend to forget and need to be reminded of, not in a didactic way, not someone telling us you have to lean on, but that's why it's like trace minerals, I think, just a very light reminder, often through a metaphor, of something we need to remember.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful definition of it for me. I think of minerals in terms of like vitamins and minerals, like what we need to live and to be nourished. But I also think of minerals as in, rocks that are in the ground and that have to be drilled a little deeper to reach. And I think poetry helps us do both those things.
Yeah. Oh, I like that sometimes it lives deep in the rocks and we need to drill to get there. Yeah, that's nice too. Jane had no idea how much mileage we were going to get from this sort of throwaway thing that she said. Now we were always thinking about.
I mean, there's so many things that you both have said in tonight's event that I've written down. And so I think a lot of those things will have mileage for a lot of people too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Robbie says, what made you want to put your anthologies together, James? Was there a particular time or event or just a general feeling that it was something you and others needed?
Yeah, so similar to what I said before, I think the process really began after the 2016 election and feeling really kind of helpless to, change the direction things seem to be going in the country. And the missing connection, the first one. And then it just took off from there. And I think I do that not because I believe, I actually do think I believe poetry can save us all. I was going to say, I don't know if I do believe that, but actually I do. So I'll just be honest and say that. Can it change the direction of our country? Well, maybe not obviously, but I think, we just tend to our little corners, whatever those happen to be, and the lenses through which we see the world, and the lens through which I see the world, whether writing it, reading it, or editing it, is poetry. And so I just wanted to offer something to the world. And it really began as a way of getting poems that I could use in the classes that I was teaching. That's really how it started, because I shared the initial poems with my 18 and 19-year-old students who were really struggling with what was going on in the country and feeling like they were not being recognized, being seen and heard. So that's kind of how that started.
Yeah. I love that you started just by wanting to make a resource for your students. Mm-hmm. Something that could carry them through. And often the biggest things we do are, again, it's those small gestures. We want to do something for the person right in front of us or the room full of people that are right there. And then maybe that grows beyond that room, as these anthologies certainly have. And a reminder that you can buy them through Bookshop. I'm just seeing that is in the chat.
Yes.
that you can support a wonderful and essential local bookshop here in Santa Cruz, Bookshop Santa Cruz, by purchasing through there. So just want a little plug,
Thank you.
a little harmless plug for that.
And if I could do a plug too, I would love to plug the Danusha's book that I see in the background there, Bonfire Opera, which also contains small kindnesses among many other life transformative poems. And I'm not just saying that, really, that book is a touchstone for me and many others. So grab a copy of that too, please.
James, isn't it ironic that our books are closer together physically than we have ever been? I mean, this is because we live on opposite sides of the country and during the pandemic. But look at our books. They're just right there.
They're there. I'll be there soon. But...
You'll be here soon. So, and we can go visit our books at Bookshop.
Yes, please do.
All of that can happen. I wanted to address David Sullivan's question about a prompt because James and I just love a prompt. So do we have a moment for that?
Please. Yeah, I was just going to ask that one.
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Hi, David, local, wonderful Santa Cruz poet here with us. And I've been thinking about this. We have so many different prompts, and I know there are contemplations and prompts in the book as well. And one thing I noticed as I read the book, preparing to do the foreword, read it in its loose manuscript stage, was that so many of the poems are about noticing. Even things that don't seem to be flattering about somebody, but then keeping the gaze on that person and describing them. Noticing has such magic to it. So to pick anyone or anything and just to really notice them, I think is really the deepest prompt. And it's the one I keep bringing myself back to. What can I notice? What can I notice about this right now? And especially maybe if it's something that, well, two things, something you don't like, how wonderful to keep noticing it and everything about it. Or maybe something or someone you love, and to describe them in a way that's, you might say warts and all, the imperfection as well. I think that's a powerful way to deepen into kindness just by paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of what Mary Oliver said, attention is the beginning of devotion. It seems like it's also a form of kindness, right, too. It is, as Denise is saying in the chat, paying attention is tending to, it's an act of love. And I think, it's much more interesting to give our attention to something that we might turn away from or might not like as much, because we'll probably notice more about it. It means we haven't looked at it very closely. So I think that's a great prompt. Yeah, beautiful prompt. And yeah, I want to go do that prompt right now.
I know. Well, isn't that good if we can end up wanting to write? That's the best thing about going to a reading or participating in one, is wanting to write, wanting to get back to the source, back to the fire.
A perfect segue into the last question,
Okay.
which is, what projects are you both working on now that we can happily anticipate?
What are we doing, James? So many things. We can't stop doing things. We're excited that we finally have a website that hosts these things, so you can look it up at the poetry. Oh, there it is. Ta-da! www.thepoetryofresilience.com. So it's on there, and we'll be sharing things. We are looking towards doing another summer session, which is already up there for the Poetry of Resilience. We do 6-week sessions with these poets and teachers that we bring in and learn so much with and from. That's where the mineral knowledge is dropped in, and so many other things. And we're actually offering a discount code, I believe. Our helper person has set that up for everyone attending tonight. So Bookshop 15 gives you 15% off of that. So if you're interested, take a look. We have 3 of our readers already designated or visitors, and 3 more that we're booking, but it's always amazing. It's our poetry church.
Yeah, and we're excited to have Natalie Goldberg for the summer,
Thank you.
Rosemary Watola Tromer, and Kelly Russell Agadon. And Kelly and Rosemary are both in the Path to Kindness as well.
Yeah, and Natalie Goldberg, I mean, I think I started reading her writing when I was in high school, her writing about writing and how to open sort of the magic gates to that. So we're really excited to get to talk with her. But we're also, should I say something that's not official yet, James, about May?
Oh, I think you can say it.
Okay, we're looking at doing a 5-day sort of deep dive workshop in May because we just want to do another thing together. And so that would be with a limited number of students. We're 25 to 30 people. It's a more intimate opportunity to share poetry, prompts, contemplations. It's a generative writing space. So we will have that on the website too if we make it official.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
Thank you both. I think we are at time, but this has been so lovely, and I'm so grateful to have you both with us and all of you for tuning in as well.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming
Yeah.
and sharing in this space with us. We really appreciate this time together.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having us. And thanks for helping me celebrate tonight, everyone. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Too.